Hello, and welcome back to another 150 Days in the Psalms. Today we are in Psalm 37, and it's a Psalm of David, a psalm as David kind of reflects back on his life. Verse 25 tells us, I was young and now I'm old. So this is the old, wise David kind of looking back and reflecting on his life, saying, how did it go? How do I see life? How do I see the way in which God kind of works? And he compares and contrasts these two groups that David sees. He sees the wicked and the righteous. We've seen those comparisons before. And he kind of compares and he contrasts how it works out for the righteous and how it works out for the wicked. You see the righteous are those who, in verse 3, trust in the Lord and do good, dwell in the land and enjoy safe pasture. Delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. There's those famous verses, delight yourself in the Lord, trust in the Lord. David he says the righteous are those who wait, who are patient, who wait in the Lord. They don't fret, verse 1. There's something about the way in which the righteous live is characterized by trust and by patience, by waiting on God, waiting on him and trusting in him and trusting in his faithfulness. And in comparison to those who trust and wait on God, we have the wicked, who rather than kind of waiting patiently for God, they, like in verse 7, they are carrying out wicked schemes. There's the contrast is between those who wait patiently for God to come through, and those who kind of busy themselves not with good things but with wicked schemes. And what are these kind of wicked schemes? What is the contrast that David is seeing? Well, particularly it seems to be around the way in which they're using their money and their time. The wicked, when it comes to their money, they borrow, verse 21, but they do not repay. The wicked, they're borrowing and hoarding for themselves, but rather than doing that in a just way, they're not actually ending up repaying that which they borrowed. And instead they are using their wealth, the wealth that we see in verse 16, the wealth of the wicked is used to bring down the poor. The wicked, says verse 14, draw the sword and bend the bow to bring down the poor and the needy. So the wicked, they're hoarding their money and they're using it to marginalize and to bring down those who are poor and needy. So that is their wicked scheme. And yet the righteous, in contrast, rather than hoarding money, verse 21 tells us that the righteous, they are always generous and lend freely. They are, in contrast to the hoarding wicked, they give freely and generously. And what's really interesting as we look at this, there seems to be this psalm seems to be referenced later in the Old Testament in Isaiah 58. So verse 6, just listen to this. He will make your righteousness shine like the dawn, the justice of your cause like the noonday sun. And Isaiah 58 is a kind of a prophecy about kind of your care for the poor. And I'll read from verse 7 of Isaiah 58. He's talking about what good a true fast looks like is to share your food with the hungry, to provide the poor wanderer with shelter when you see you're naked, to clothe them, and to not turn away from your own flesh and blood. And then listen to this, then your light will break forth like the dawn, your healing will quickly appear, your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. It's a real similar promise to that in this psalm, which is that those who care for the poor, those who look out for those around them, who give generously, who care, well, the promise is that their righteousness will shine like the dawn, the justice of your cause like the noonday sun. God looks at it and he sees righteousness and justice. So in contrast to the wicked, the righteous are those who care for the poor, who give generously, who trust in God. Well, David sees, he says, as I look back and I look back at my life, and often it seemed like in the short term it wasn't easy for the righteous. In verse 24, it says that the righteous, they do stumble, though they don't fall, but it's not easy. Whereas the wicked, they seem to, in verse 7, they succeed in their ways, David says. He says, you'll look around you and you'll see wicked people. It looks like they're succeeding. Verse 16 says that they have the wealth is there. They flourish, verse 35 tells us. David says, as an old guy, as I look back, I could see that, yes, the wicked had some short-term gain. It seemed to get it. But actually, long-term, when all things are kind of said and done, rather than succeeding long-term, the wicked end up being destroyed. Verse 15, the sword, and remember the wicked, they draw the sword and bend their bow to bring down the poor and the needy. Verse 15 tells us that they get their comeuppance. The sword will pierce their own hearts and their bows will be broken. They are, verse 35, no more. They are destroyed. The Lord laughs at them. He sees them. He says, look, you think you're going to succeed. And yet the evil deeds that you do, they come back to haunt you, so to speak. You get your comeuppance. And in contrast to that, those who are righteous, though it seems hard at first, they have, in verse 18, an inheritance that will endure forever. They inherit the land. You see, God's, David looked back and he says, we trust in God. We wait patiently for him. We live lives of faithfulness, of justice, caring for those around us. And though it sometimes seems like by doing so we miss out, perhaps it seems like the wicked are those that kind of are looking out for themselves. They're the ones that seem to be enjoying the success. David says, when you look over time and you see, over time, what happens is it is the wicked that fall on their own swords, and it is the righteous who receive the inheritance. It's the righteous who God gives favor to. And he kind of sums it up with this last two verses, and I'll encourage you to pray this. Verse 39 and 40, the salvation of the righteous comes from the Lord. He is their stronghold in times of trouble. The Lord helps them and delivers them. He delivers them from the wicked and saves them because they take their refuge in him. This psalm encourages us to trust in God, to wait patiently for him, to even when it seems like our righteous living isn't causing us to have success. If it seems like we could take some shortcuts perhaps in our life, we could just hoard some more for ourselves and that would lead us to success. This psalm encourages us to wait patiently for God, to wait for him, and to know that as you live a life of faithfulness, if you live with God, you receive an inheritance that we read elsewhere that does not perish, spoil, or fade, an inheritance that waits for us. Be encouraged, David says. Trust in the Lord. Delight yourself in him, and he will give you the desires of your heart.